just gonna test this first, see how it, okay. Yeah, and the pointer is here. So, morning everyone. My talk today will be about bridging patient-centric drug product design with inhalation devices in order to enhance pulmonary drug delivery. So I'll give a bit of an overview of what is patient-centric drug product design and what is a patient-centric model. So patient-centric drug product design is the process of identifying the comprehensive needs of a target patient population and use that knowledge to implement those needs into the drug product design in order that then the patient can have a highly benefit from the therapeutic outcome. So in a patient-centric model, how can this be perceived during healthcare provision? So as you can see in the image, the patient is expected to be in the center from start to finish during healthcare provision, in which he builds relationships with the different stakeholders involved in the process. Adequate information interaction is obtained, which will help the patient to make a healthcare informed decision, which will then lead to a highly efficacy of the prescribed treatments and better therapeutic outcomes. So in this sense, the patient feels really empowered about the provision that is given to him because he feels like they are doing the best to meet his needs or their needs, and he feels also accountable. So in a way, the patient will feel empowered, will feel motivated to proceed with this healthcare provision given by the healthcare providers, and this will also contribute for a better outcome. One day someone wise said, you can deliver tomorrow's innovation if you are still using yesterday's business models. And this is true for the pharmaceutical industry because, the business model in the pharmaceutical industry has been stagnated for many years. And with the highly regulated environment we have, it's very difficult to implement innovation. So this is in a way is reducing the speed or the input for implementing a patient-centric model nowadays. Nevertheless, we are seeing some improvements, but the background mindset needs to be changed. And what we need to do first is in relation to the pharmaceutical pipeline models and programs, there needs to be a change of the focus from patient to, they need to put the patient first before the profit, because of course pharmaceutical industries, they want to ensure that their molecule goes to the market. So there's also an overview of, okay, we need to make profit out of this, and mainly that's the main trigger for the motivation, and they are not thinking so much about the patient in the end. So then this leads into a drug product that maybe in the end does not really meet the needs of the patient, and this then can lead to a low efficacy of the therapeutic choices. And the second one is we need to consider the patient not as a subject that is enrolled into clinical trials in which we use for getting the data that we need, but instead it should be a partner, which is together with the pharmaceutical company and all the stakeholders are working together to ensure that the best treatment or the best drug product is designed and then provided to the market. Also, since we are now handling a lot of digital technology in the pharmaceutical industry, and this trend is expected to continue within the next years, we are expecting also that patient-centric clinical trials will accelerate and become more preeminent as we employ digital technology in the pharmaceutical industry. So here I just want to give an overview of the evolution of the patient-centric mindset, let's say, in the pharmaceutical industry or within the regulatory authorities. First, in 2008, we had the revision of the ICH Q8 guideline in which stated that products should be designed to meet patient needs. Then we had in 2013 the EMA guideline on the development of appropriate pediatric medicines, in which we have seen a switch on the trend for people to think that liquid dosage forms are the gold standard for pediatric populations, and then shifting into maybe mini tablets and multiparticulates, which are solid oral dosage forms, and it was proved anyway in several clinical trials that children and even neonates are able to swallow these dosage forms. Then in 2020, a similar approach in relation to the pediatric one was implemented also for the geriatric population in this sense. So how can we develop better medicines that can meet the needs of older patient populations with high comorbidities and aging? And going into the future, maybe at some point we will also see some guidelines for the development of appropriate inhalers for inhalation therapy. The consumer industry is a good example of how to implement a patient-centric model, because in the consumer industry, the end user, so the person which will make use of the technology that is being provided, is involved early into the development process. And this should be the same applicable into the pharmaceutical industry and whenever a new drug therapy is being developed. So the clinical trials of the consumer industry is basically the market research that they do in advance, in which they obtain information from the population to understand what are their needs, what is the appropriateness of the product that they are trying to develop for this population, how will the population use this product, and how they perceive this product. So by getting this information, they can then tailor the technology in order to meet the needs of that patient population, not patient population in this case, of the consumer population. And the mobile phone is a good example. I mean, if we look to 1973, that was a mobile phone, and nowadays a mobile phone is a small TV that you can do everything with it, and even older patients can use it. So it's a good example of how to implement a centric approach into the development. So shifting now to pulmonary drug delivery. When we talk about this type of drug delivery, what are the main drivers which need to be considered during development and manufacturing? So we have three main ones, which is the patient, the device, and the formulation. And here in my presentation, I will make the link between patient and device. I'll not talk about formulation. So the goal of my presentation, I'll give also some case studies, is to show how we can use the patient needs in order to develop devices that can better meet their needs. When we look into drug delivery to the lungs, there's a multitude of medical devices available in the market with many different mechanisms. We can have capsule, we can have MDIs, we can have DPIs, we can have DPIs with a capsule mechanism, with blister mechanism, with reservoir. So this can become very challenging for a patient to be able to use these devices properly and ensure that the prescribed therapy is being really effective. So if we are developing inhalation products without considering the patient's needs, these products will for sure fail, because there's the interface between the patient and the device that needs to be considered. So what can we see in the literature regarding the administration, the use of the medical devices by patients? So I'm just giving you here two examples. The first one, what the data shows is there's really still a lot of errors that the patients do when handling medical devices, inhalation devices. So here you have one example in which, so in control, the patient was using one type of inhaler and then they changed to another device. And you can see that independent of the outcome, if it was unsuccessful, partial, or successful, there was a reduction of this output when the patient switched the device. So whenever there's a change on the mechanism, this is prone to more administration errors, because there's a change on how the patient was used to use that device, and this requires training, and maybe that's something that we should look into in a better way going forward, to ensure that proper training is given to the patients so that these can use the medical devices in an appropriate manner. So this is just another study here, which they evaluated the percentage of administration errors, 3 different types of DPIs versus an MDI. Of course, for the MDI, there's a higher chance of error because it's a double mechanism, so the patient needs to activate and inhale at the same time, while for the DPI, the mechanism is triggered just by the inhalation of the patient. So, but even so, you can see within different MDIs and different mechanisms of use of those MDIs, you can see administration errors also. So that's the point I'm trying to make here. And on this study, basically they observed the administration technique of the patients over a 40-year period. And you can see, so there are 3 different lines. which the output was they had a correct administration, or was acceptable administration, or it was poor. But what I'm trying to point out here is that you can see that there's like a flat line. So even within 40 years, the patient learns in the beginning how to use the device in one way, and during the 4-year period, they will use the device in the same way always. So it's just to point out here that we really need to think more and put more effort into training programs for the patients to be trained in a proper manner, not only on the beginning, but also follow-ups to ensure that they are really using the devices in an appropriate manner. So I just want to show you here a quick example.
Well, sometimes doctors make mistakes. Anna, you need to try twice as hard to fix them. Are you using your inhaler?
All the time. Go through one a week.
You sure you're using it right?
Do I look like an idiot?
No. Why don't you show me how your inhaler works?
So I think I made my point for this video. Sometimes people automatically perceive that this is, I mean, you just look at it and you know how to use it, but that's really not the case in a real-world setting. So training is really important. And talking about training, I actually came across this study when I was preparing the slides for this presentation. And this study is actually from last month, so it's very recent. And what they did, they basically did a systematic review of clinical trials which were applying inhalation products, and they evaluated if the inhalation technique was being accessed in these clinical trials. And what you can see is that, so you have two different administration targets. So you have asthma, COPD, with small molecules and with biologics. So they did the separation. And then you can see that for small molecules, out of 118 studies, only 14 were accessing the administration technique, while in biologics, only 1 out of 54 were assessing the administration technique. So you can see here that there's really a gap, and current clinical trials are not really looking into how the patient interacts with the device and uses it in an appropriate manner. So the outcome of this study, they gather kind of expert panel, which they call the ADMIT, so the Aerosol Drug Management Improvement Team, in which they are trying to tackle this. And they develop kind of a checklist, which can then be applied on the clinical trials to ensure that the administration technique is also being accessed. So this is a good initiative by this association. And there's also a website, which is inhalersforyou.org, where this is very useful for the patient because there's an overview of the different inhaler products and different devices that are available in the market, and it gives a description of those devices, a bit how you should use them. So this can be very support the patients in order to try to reduce their administration errors. But of course, reading only, it's not enough. You need to practice also, so training is very relevant here. So in a nutshell, when we talk about patient centricity and inhalation devices, this is not a trend, but it's a real need. So if you think about patients and chronic diseases, they have to live with their respiratory issues, and they have a lot of difficulties, and they need to use the inhaler every day, 1, 2, 3 times. So there's a need to design inhaler devices which are really user-friendly and can be intuitively used from the patient's perspective. So there's a need like I mentioned, in order to implement patient-centric drug product design, you need to involve the patient early into the development process. So the same should be done here. So a bit like the consumer industry, the example that I gave. So in order to develop them, the patient should be deeply involved in the development process. And I'm really running out of time. In order to have a suitable device, and their opinions and feedbacks are of course important in order to achieve that. So this is an example from Trudel Medical. This is a company which has medical devices and inhalation products. And they made a proposal for a patient-centric development of inhalation devices. So you have 4 different phases. In the first phase, you are creating your problem statement, and in each phase, of course, the patient is involved. Then in phase 2, you have the initial concepts, which we see, okay, which designs the patient is more friendly or likes more. Then you have the industrial design, where you test the design and together with the patients, and then you have the design engineering that we do a final optimization in order to achieve what the patient was aiming at. So I have 2 case studies. I hope I have enough time for both. Anyway, there's no talk after, so should be fine, right? I'm kidding. So they did an initial study, of course, with the patients to understand what is that the spacers have that the patients don't like. So they give several examples, and they identify the key negative aspects. So spacers are big. They would prefer something they could put in the pocket, something that they could also put the inhalation device into and close, so to reduce the size of it, and so that they could carry with them easily. So they focus in 2-in-1, so chamber and case design. They proposed two prototypes to the patient population, and the handling study was conducted. So these were the two devices that they had, and their sizes and shapes. Which one you think was selected by the patients? Quickly. A? No, it was B. You know why? Because it fitted better into the patient's pocket. So nothing really to do with the design. It was just the patient, oh, this sits better in my pocket, so I like this shape more. So they did additional studies. They had 3 final prototypes that were evaluated by also the patient, and this was the final design. So you can see that this is a spacer combined with a case where the inhaler is allocated inside. And the final was the design engineering. So these were important parameters for the patient population: ability to open, easy, quick to access the device, and in intuitive use. And they did, of course, an assessment, which you can see here. So on the right side, you can see that this was for Ventolin without the spacer. On the left side, you can see the use with the spacer, and you can see that you get this here within 2 seconds. 2 seconds delay using the spacer is the same thing as doing delivery just with the inhaler for no delay at all, so an appropriate administration. So you can see here that with the use of this medical device, there's a reduction in the patient dependency for the inhalation process. So this was the end result. You can see, so there's a case, the patient can put the inhaler inside and can use it for inhalation. So quickly to finalize, this is the second case study, and I think this would be more familiar for you. So this is the Respimat, which is a product that has been many years off the market from Boehringer. And although the initial design that they had was still recognized as easy to use by the Arthritis Foundation, so which was a good thing, they still took more effort in order to really improve more the device and in order to meet the patient needs. So they thought about how, okay, our device is easy to inhale, but what about the usability? What can we do to increase this, to improve this? And also, there's a lot of talks about the CFCs, waste reduction, and what could they do here also? So they did a design based on user feedback, and this was the platform and the device that they have since 2019, which allows enhanced handling. There was an upgrade in the dose indicator, and it was designed for use multiple cartridges, so a monthly administration. So just quick overview, you can see here the image quality is not very good, but you can see a bit here the differences of what was modified and what is new between the disposable previous device with the new reusable device. And these are the main differences which really improve the patient handling, administration. So they increased the dose indicator for patients to see it better. There's a signal which says that the cartridge is over, so you can take it out, and the handling of the cartridge to removal and change is also very easy to do. They did a test to assess in different countries to assess, okay, what is the difference between the previous one with the reusable one, the one we're trying to implement now, and if really the reusable one brings benefits to the patient. and that was confirmed. So the reusable RespiMat was improved from a patient handling perspective. Patients were happy with the new device due to all these reasons that I mentioned already before. So, and these were the three main ones. So ease of handling, convenience of use, and device performance was also improved. So patients were very happy with these changes in the inhalation device. So in summary, what I'm trying to bring here is that we can really use the patient experience and preferences in order to develop drug products. So when applying patient-centric, we can refine and reframe the problem statement. Also for device products, of course, we can establish a suitable drug product design which will meet the target population that we are studying. And we can also understand the value of repeated studies, because if we involve the patient early into the development process and the patient insists the beginning handling or administering the drug product that we are trying to develop, that will give us a lot of knowledge on how to improve it and design it. So going forward with regards to inhalation products, that is what I expect to see. So there's a lot of AI now and digital healthcare. So basically we'll have digital inhalers which are directly connected to your phone and to the healthcare provider. And there's an easy change of information which the healthcare provider will be able to access if the patient is really administering well the device or not. And this will then create a rapid interaction, and in case we see that the outcomes are not being good, changes can be made quicker. So I just wanted to point out that these are my opinions and not the ones of Takeda, the company that I represent currently, and I want to thank you for your attention. Any questions? I am the chair, so does anyone have any questions? I'll bring the microphone.
It's a pretty depressing situation that I'm sure I've sat listening to this being said 20 years ago, how to get customers, patients to use the inhalers properly. And you've shown that with the flat line graph. I mean, do we just give up and go home?
I mean, that's the whole point. I think, and that's what I was trying to point out, and the reason why I brought this study from last month into my presentation, just to show that really we are forgetting about how patients interact with the device, and we are forgetting on how to properly train them in order to use it correctly. And of course, when you think about it, and with the current business model that we have, what happens? The patient goes to the doctor. Oh, you have asthma. I will prescribe you an inhaler. The patient then goes to the pharmacy. The pharmacist gives the inhaler to the patient, and most likely what happens is the pharmacist is telling the patient, oh, you should do this and this and this, and do it at home. So during this whole process, the training is missing somehow, and we really need to improve this aspect of the business model that we have currently. And that is also what I was trying to point out here by showing that graph that you mentioned. So yeah, something that we could improve. Yes, please.
Even with the best training, and then we have the most ideal patient who follows all the information to the dot, we still can't get the optimum dose delivered. So that, I suppose, would continue to be a challenge.
Yeah, because I mean, here I was focusing on the interface between the patient and the device, but of course there is the third part, which I mentioned in the beginning, which is the formulation. So
Yeah.
it's pulmonary drug delivery is a very challenging delivery mechanism. There's a lot of variables that interact with each other. Of course, we can improve the patient interaction with the device, but there's also the inhalable part. And if the patient is not really inhalable in the correct manner, and this is not something that you can teach him, like you can tell him, okay, you can inhale like this, but still maybe the outcome will not be the ideal one. So it's very tricky. Yeah, but I mean, you can really focus about training usability, but you mentioned correctly, like there's always be people who will not be able to take the most out of it because there are other variables that come into play also.
Yeah, because of multiple things.
Yes, and
Patient's condition is
older patients and arthritis, and they don't have grip, so it's really challenging.
I suppose the real question behind that would be, do we really need to rethink the formulation design, the device design, whereas we remove the element of reliability on the patient to take it?
I mean, when I showed this digital inhalers, that is my, I mean, I'll not say it's my expectation, but I really hope that would happen. Like with these new inhalers, digital inhalers designs, maybe we'll see a bit of that. But there's one? Okay. Yeah, so let's hope these things will get better and easier for the patient also with the design. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I work at the University of Brighton and train pharmacy students in how to use them and how to train patients to use them, and we encourage them to therefore use
Last
them,
question, sorry.
use them themselves, but then also when they're training the patient to get them to use it and show back their technique and things like that. But I was just going to say, you know, I run 3-hour classes on this, and the students really struggle to use them, and they have a little placebo that they play with for all of that time, you know, giving it a go. So really that it's that time factor with the training to
Yeah.
your healthcare professional with your patients, and how, you know, I don't think we can overestimate how much time is needed, and also how the availability of placebo inhalers for that training
Yes.